Dallas Cowboys win again. They beat Washington yesterday, 25-10. Defense is playing great. Let's talk about it with Marcus Spears. Swagoo joining us now. Marcus, let's start with the defense and how good they are holding, I know it's Washington, holding an NFL team to 10 points in a game.
Man, they are phenomenal, man, and they tied together so well. And we talk about that a lot as defenses in the NFL. How good can we tie our front, our rush to our linebackers, and then obviously in the secondary. And the thing that I love so much is they're sure tacklers. I think they are the hardest team in the NFL to play on a second and long or a third and long situation when those rush guys are in there with Armstrong, Fowler, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Micah. It's Dan Quinn coupled with a lot of fast, athletic guys. And one guy, to me, that's been popping off the screen, fellas, is Donovan Wilson, man.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be around every ball. He seems to be making every tackle, and he's a great complement to what those guys are doing up front. But it's an entire unit, man, and everybody is getting after the quarterback. Neville Gallimore had a sack. Fowler had a sack yesterday. So it's not just relying on Mike to do extraordinary things or DeMarcus Lawrence to do extraordinary things. It seems like all of these guys are bringing something to the party. And in order to be a good defense, you got to be two things. You got to be deep, and you got to have a bunch of guys that's around the football. And if anything pops off screen about Dallas defense, when you see the ball in the hands of either the ball carrier or receiver, they are flying like they hair on fire to get there, which is phenomenal. And then Diggs, man, turning into a real rubber corner. I know everybody was enamored with the interceptions last year, but when you get the ball that much, you take chances. I think he's playing more at a consistent level, and learning, and still in turn having an opportunity to turn the football over. This is a top 5 unit in the NFL, fellas.
Marcus, as a defensive player, and you kind of have a feeling that you can be pretty special. But when you start playing this way and guys get confident, I mean, describe that feeling to a couple of guys here that have never experienced that. But what's the feeling like when you know you're pretty good?
Man, listen, you just want to test it against the offenses. You want to continue week in and week out to prove to the guys within the building that this is absolutely who we are. Man, we know how much things change in the NFL. You could be good one week, and you could be like Tampa, who we consider the best defense, and then you give up 41 to the Chiefs last night. So you just want to continue to prove it, man, and you want to more than proving it to anyone that's watching or guys like us that's in the media. You trying to get into competition mode. Who can make the most tackles? Who can make the play? And then the units start talking to each other, and we trying to figure who can get more sacks, who can have more TFLs, and you turn it into a competition within. But when you rolling like they rolling, man, you feel like it doesn't matter who you're playing against. It don't matter who you're playing. You can have that same type of success. So as we obviously continue throughout this season, and I think it's fair to mention, like some of the offenses that they played haven't been world beaters, but here we go. Like we got the Rams now, and Allen, and obviously Cooper Kupp, and then Philly the following week. So the next 2 weeks will give you a lot of answers about if we really are what we think we are, or if we feasted on some offenses that obviously struggle to put points on the board.
Either way, Dak's not in, and the Cowboys got 3 wins with Cooper Rush. I don't care. I just look at the record, and I know that's going to help them at the end of the year as we visit with Marcus Spears on the Blitz. Now, I got a question for you because you mentioned the competition in the locker room amongst those defensive guys. Now, Micah Parsons and Tank Lawrence have both talked that they have a bet between each other on who has the most sacks at the end of the year, but neither will reveal what actually is on the line. Take me back to your locker room days. what do you think might be on the line? I'm not asking if you know, but if it were you, what would be on the table for you guys back in your day?
I tell you what, man, we probably some jewelry, some high-end luggage, or even sometimes paying for a trip for a guy all season hits. We had those type of things going on competition-wise, so I wouldn't be shocked if it was one of those three things that we give our listeners insight: jewelry, some a nicely planned trip that the losing guy pays for, or you get you some fine luxury luggage going into the next season for when you take them trips to games. But yeah, those are the type of bets you make, man. And you know, when we talk about DeMarcus, obviously you're dealing with big money. Micah is on his way to getting that money, but DeMarcus has already seen a lot of those checks clear. So I'm sure the bet is a pretty penny.
Okay, Marcus, I have to ask you this, and don't laugh at me, man, but I want to know what you guys, when you're talking football, ESPN, and everybody's talking about Cooper Rush and how well he's playing 3 in a row. What do the Cowboys do? I mean, obviously they're going to go back to Dak Prescott, but what are you guys talking? Is there anybody there that's saying they ought to stick with Cooper?
Nah, man. Nah, I think the great thing about the conversations that we've been having is you got a guy where you absolutely know if something happens down the line, you can still win with him. And you got a sample size, man. When you got a quarterback, a backup that can do what Cooper has been doing. Listen, man, the most impressive thing about Cooper has been late in games.
Yeah.
Like, in Cincinnati, you had to have it. In New York, you had to have it. Right? The Washington game was tit for tat, and then he started making plays at the end offensively as well. So it's not just about him playing well, it's how he's playing. Because you guys know, man, y'all been covering this league long enough. In the NFL, man, you very rarely going to have blowouts. These games are going to be close throughout the third quarter, sometimes going into the fourth, and you just got to start to that is when we deem quarterbacks. We start putting them on different levels when we see how much they respond in crunch time. And the great thing about what Cooper has been doing, and like my conversations have been geared towards, he's playing within himself. He's been a master at executing the play call. And that is like 75 to 80% of what you need to be as a quarterback, right? Like, I'm not writing Cooper into Canton. I ain't writing him into the Ring of Honor. But his execution and the way he's playing and the confidence that other guys have in him to make plays is just a great problem to have, right? And they have that with Dak as well. The one thing I think is going to benefit this team more than anything down the stretch is that I think Kellen Moore has learned some things about himself. And sometimes your reliability on talent and what you have in your mind as what a guy is, which potentially he had for that, it goes out of the window when you got to devise a game plan for a guy where you don't actually know what the response is going to be, right? Everybody can look back to last year and say, we knew Cooper was going to do this because we saw him do it against Minnesota. You'd be lying through your teeth. Everybody would be lying.
Yeah.
You think lightning in a bottle, but now when you see the execution, and that's the one guy, you know, as critical as I've been about Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore, I think both of those guys have done a phenomenal job settling this team offensively and realizing how they're going to have to play. You can lean on a really good defense. You need to execute at a very high level when we have our opportunities. We need to hit those opportunities. And I think Kellen has done a phenomenal job scheming things up, adding more like to that run game, getting CD involved, finding ways to get Noah continuously involved. And Cooper is just executing to a T, man. And that's like, that travels, fellas. Like you talk about competition in the NFL, and like I brought it up, and we know things get harder as you play different teams. But the reality is your execution is up to you. Like, you want to walk off the field, and I used to say this when I would get interviewed after games. You want to walk off the field knowing the team beat you. You don't want to leave saying we left things out there, and that's the reason we lost. You can live with a team just being better, and they out-executed us, and they played well. But you don't want to leave off the field saying, man, we should have been able to handle that team or be in that game or even win the game if we would have just executed at a high level. And that's what Cooper and this offense is doing. And defensively, I thought we would be good anyway. But you got to have some offense to win a lot of games in this league. And you absolutely got to have some offense when you get into the playoffs to win games.
Marcus Spears joining us here on the Blitz, former Cowboy first-round draft pick. You can watch him every day on ESPN on NFL Live. Before we let you go, Marcus, it was a great win over Washington, whatever the hell they want to call themselves now. As a player, especially if you're not from Texas or you didn't grow up a Cowboy fan, how much inside the locker room does beating Washington mean?
Between Washington and Philly, man, like those are the two teams. And I know everybody's going to say the Giants. And obviously being in the division, you got those rivals. But when you beat Washington and when you beat Philly, it feels different. This division is so hard to win back-to-back, as we know through the records. And you put a notch in your cap every time you beat that team. I talked to some guys that played for Washington. I talked to some guys that played for Philly when we was battling. And them divisional records come up about who wanted more when they were playing and the disdain that we have. And we know the Cowboys are vilified by every team in the NFL, but especially those two. So it's a little extra incentive when you beat Washington and when you beat Philly than any other team in the league when it comes to the Cowboys.
And ultimately, that's what matters. Cowboys beat Washington. And I'll give them credit, man. I like those uniforms that they wore. Joe and I were both at the game yesterday. Those uniforms look good, although I think the Steelers might want them back. But they did look good on Washington. They just need to take that W and turn it into an L.
Yeah, whatever their names are, man.
That's right.
Have the next year.
Awesome. Marcus Spears, Swagoo, always appreciate it, my friend. We will talk to you next week.
All right, fellas. I'll talk to y'all next Monday, man.
Absolutely. Thanks. Marcus Spears.